Welcome to Revitalize and Replant with Mark Clifton, where we equip pastors to take their churches from declining to thriving by pointing them to a new future and a new hope. Join us weekly for encouragement and practical advice in your pastoring journey.
Welcome to Revitalize and Replant. I'm Mark Clifton. I'm here with Mark Hallock. We are so glad you're with us today. In a previous podcast, we looked over a wonderful article by H.B. Charles. Please go back and listen to the podcast, and please read the article by H.B. Charles. And it's about wrong reasons to leave a church and right reasons to leave a church. And Pastor, you need to hear this and you need to share it with your congregation so that you won't have people leaving your church for the wrong reason. And let's just run down these real quick. One wrong reason, here's some wrong reasons for leaving a church. That somebody in that church has sinned. Well, somebody's always going to sin in a church. And you don't leave the church, you try to deal with the sin. And the people stay, and maybe if the person who's living in sin won't correct themselves, they're the ones that are removed from the church. But you don't just run from a church because there's somebody in there who's sinful. You try to deal with that. Number two, you don't leave over secondary disagreements. Again, we talked about, how many times do we have communion every month? Or do we have it every week? Or, do we all have to homeschool or not homeschool? Or all kinds of, or which translation of the Bible do you use? Or what Sunday school literature should we use? Or, we don't have Sunday school now, we have small groups. All those kinds of things. You don't leave over those kinds of secondary issues. And the disunity. Look, it's not going to be easy for all of us to come together and be unified. We like different things. We enjoy different things.
Yep, that's right.
And so if you leave because you can't get along with everybody, well, you're going to go to the next church and not get along with them. You've got to fight for that unity. You've got to battle for that unity. You've got to submit yourself to others. You're going to be willing to see others as more important than you. That's an edifying thing. We don't leave over personal offenses. Somebody in that church is going to say something to you or your family that's going to offend you at some time, maybe more than one time. But we don't leave over offenses. We try to work through those, and we forgive our brothers, and we show the world that we can work through these things. And we don't leave because of that, because you're going to find it in the next church you go to. And we don't leave because we're unwilling to submit to authority. We want authority to be biblical and strong. We hold our leaders to strong biblical standards. But once we've held them to those standards, if they say we're going to do this, then we do it. And, again, sometimes, I don't want to do that because I just don't want to do it. Well, your leaders have said to do it. The Lord's trying to teach you something. You don't leave because of an unwillingness to submit to biblical authority. And that's really critical. You don't leave also because of the fact that you have a low view of the church.
Yes.
Which is basically, I take it or leave it. I'm not really that involved here. Our kids like it, but once they get older, we're probably going to go to a different church that has something else for us.
Yes.
Or I've heard this pastor is going over here. I love his preaching.
It's got a cafeteria style.
Yeah. So a low view of church membership. That's not a reason to just hop around from church to church. And then really a disregard for the truth. I mean, basically, we said in another podcast that someone who preaches on a regular basis the truth, it's going to be hard to hear sometimes. You're going to hear sermons about need for repentance, about an unfinished task that we all have, about strong stewardship. And after a while, you go, that's pretty harsh stuff. I think I would like to go somewhere where they're more affirming in what I believe. And that's another thing. All right, so that's reasons to not leave a church. Here are reasons to leave a church. One, if they quit preaching the gospel. And what we mean by that is if they're not preaching the atoning sacrifice of Jesus Christ.
Yes, that's right.
That's really important. The blood atonement of Jesus Christ. They can preach Jesus, but preach him as a loving, caring person.
Just
and
a good dude.
Somehow or another, his sacrificial act makes us want to be more loving. Well, that is true, but that's just part of the gospel. The whole gospel is the atonement. If that's not the basis for what's being heard, you've got some problems. And then also, we leave over doctrinal dysfunction. If they are not teaching sound biblical doctrine on those first issues, you cannot stay there. In other words, if they say it doesn't really matter in our Baptist church whether you want to be baptized or be immersed or have your baby baptized, obviously those are obvious doctrinal issues. You can't hang together when those things are so dispersonate. But there are reasons. A good reason to leave is if God calls you to leave.
Yes.
Maybe you move physically. Obviously, that's one thing. But God may say, you've been here for 10 years, but there's another church in town that really could use your ministry, your help, and you go to your pastors and you say, we love this church, but Pastor, I think our ministry needs to be over in this field right now. And God will move, because God builds his church. And he may move you from time to time. But he doesn't move you to escape a bad situation. He calls you somewhere. So again, as you go back and listen to the previous podcast, hopefully, pastors, this will be helpful as you instruct your church on why they should leave a church and why they shouldn't. Now, once you determine to leave a church because God's called you somewhere else, one of your church members has, then how can they leave? You know, sometimes it's just like, I feel like it's like a Star Trek. They just gone.
Yeah.
You know, they just
they ghost you.
They ghost you.
Yeah, they're gone. That's right.
But here's a way you can leave a local church in an honoring way. These come from H.B. Charles. We'll put this in the show notes. Number 1, Mr. Hallock,
is pray. Pray. It all begins with prayer. Important decisions. We know this. This is basic. But so often we ignore it. Important decisions should only be made after diligent prayer. And so leaving a church, that is such a decision, right? So pray. Here's what we would say. Pray about your motives. Pray about the relationships. Really look at your heart. And am I praying? Are we leaving for the right reasons, for godly reasons?
When someone comes to you, Pastor, and he says, or she says, we think we need to leave the church, you need to ask him, well, have you prayed about it?
Have you prayed about
and
this?
And here's how I want you to pray about it.
Yes.
Would you pray that God would guard your heart so that you would know what your motives are? That you're not just trying to find something more enjoyable, that you're not trying to leave a situation that the Lord would have you work through for your own edification, that he maybe wants you to be part of the solution here, and if you leave, you're not going to be part of the solution. So would you please pray for wisdom, for submissiveness, to really discern your own motives, for what your duty is to this church, what your relationship is to your brothers and sisters. You pray through all of those things.
That's right.
And then we'll talk about what God has told you.
And then the second thing is, in light of that prayer, and I love that he says this, you need to examine your motives. Now, when you hear the word examine, okay, think about an examination. What are you doing? You're going into the doctor for an examination where you're going to look closely. A doctor's going to look closely at your body. They're going to look really analyze. So when we talk about examine your motives, to me, this is like getting real. This is being honest before the Lord.
I might say, well, I'm leaving because God's calling us to another church. But really, there's that guy in the church.
Yeah.
He just drives me nuts.
Is that really it?
I don't really like hanging out with him. He's kind of arrogant, and he just puts off to me, and I don't like that. Yep. Or, there are some homeschool people in this church, and I don't send my kids to homeschool, and they kind of look down at me. Or the other way around. I'm homeschooled, and I'm the only homeschool person here, and they look at me like I'm weird. But you couch it as saying, I'm leaving the church because I really feel like God's... And again, the Lord may want you to stay in that difficult situation to learn how to work with those brothers and sisters.
Right.
To teach you something
That's how you grow.
How about humility and submitting. And as Paul said, to look at others' agenda as more important than your own.
Yeah.
And if you leave for the wrong reasons, you may couch it in the right words, but examine, pray, and then examine. Why am I really leaving? Is it just because it's easier than to deal with things I don't want to deal with?
That's
and
right.
I'll be honest with you. There's enough conflict in all of our lives. At work, there's conflict. At school, there's conflict. In our politics, in our culture, in our community, there's conflict. Sometimes even in our home, there's conflict. In our extended family, there can be conflict. We're doing these podcasts around Thanksgiving and Christmas, and you're going to be with extended family.
Oh boy,
and
yeah, you bet.
Some of it's going to be conflict. And you go, the last thing I want is conflict in my church. So I'm just going to go to another church. I'm just going to find another place to go.
Yep.
And what will happen is you'll do that, and you'll stay on the fringe of that other church because you don't want to get involved again because you don't want to be in conflict again. And none of that's good. You've got to throw yourself into this family of a church and learn to love people who are unloving and unlovable at times because you're unlovable at times. So examine your heart. There are reasons to leave. But sometimes we couch them in the right words, but we've got the wrong motives.
Dude, and this is why you need to have friends, godly friends, or a friend that you can call. I mean, this takes humility, but to say, man, and I hope you do this, guys, with other things in your life, but to say, man, am I off here? Is there something?
Yeah.
We all have blind spots.
Absolutely.
Is there something that you hear this, and am I missing something? Do you feel like since there's a motive or something that's off?
Yeah.
Please show me that.
And also, you don't leave quickly. Because you can get upset about
No,
something.
you don't lose. That's right.
You can, a certain decision the church makes that rubs you the wrong way. Someone gets a leadership position you don't think they should have. You don't leave quickly over those things. This is a serious. Moving out of that church is a serious issue, and so pray about it specifically, and then examine your motives specifically. All right, and thirdly, review the commitments you've made to serve.
Ooh, that's good.
What are you leaving? What holes are you leaving? We believe that the Lord builds his church. So he brought you there
Yes.
to fulfill something.
For a reason.
What happens when you leave?
Yeah.
So what happens? What's going to happen? Answer these questions prayerfully before you leave. If you've made commitments, do everything in your power to honor those before you leave. Put the honor of Christ ahead of yours. H.B. Charles says this: push past unworthy quitting points. You do not want to be found AWOL from an assignment that God has given you.
Ooh.
You don't want to run over the wall and escape from an assignment.
I'll tell you
that
who
God's
does.
given you.
Satan does.
Satan wants you to do that.
Satan wants to see you skip out on the assignment God gave you.
So when you leave a church, pray that you're leaving for the right reasons. Examine your motives. Review the commitments you've made, and then make sure, this is so important, there are no unresolved interpersonal conflicts. I mean, if there are some conflicts there, and yet you are told to leave, or let's put it this way, you get another job in another city, and you've got some unresolved conflicts there. Work through those before you leave that church. I got to tell you a great story. This is worth listening to the podcast. Every day there ought to be one reason, and sometimes there's none. But hopefully today, here's the reason.
Okay.
So there was a young pastor I knew, and this guy was, he was tough. I mean, he had some courage, maybe at times too much. Okay, I don't know.
Just gritty.
Gritty.
Just gritty.
Oh, man.
Bring
gritty.
it. Just bring it on.
He was
Yeah,
gritty.
that kind of guy.
So he's got this church in this town, and it's growing. And it's hitting on all cylinders, and it's going really well. And people are coming from other churches. And this one lady comes, she's an older lady, middle-aged, a little over that, he said. And on the way out, she shakes his hand, and she says, I want you to know, we've been coming here for a few Sundays. This is the exact kind of church we're looking for. You're the exact kind of preacher we're looking for. God has just brought us here. And he said, well, where are you now? And she said, oh, we're over at First Baptist Church, which is still in the same town. He said, really? What's wrong over there? She said, oh, our preacher. She said, I just can't get along with him anymore, and we just don't see eye to eye on anything. And she began to really criticize him. And this young pastor, who was like in his 20s, he stops this lady. He goes, I want you to stop right here. He said, you should not be talking about your pastor that way to another pastor. And he said, I'm going to have to tell you, when you leave today, I'm going to call your pastor because he's a friend of mine. And I'm going to tell him what you told me. And you cannot join this church until you reconcile with that man. Whoa!
Dude.
Mic drop, right?
Do you know how she responded?
She was not happy.
I'm sure she wasn't.
And she never came back.
She got called out.
She got called out.
Yep.
And how many times do we not call them out? It's, oh, we're so glad you're here. That young man would not listen to her tear another pastor in town
Well, and I'll
apart.
tell you what else, the wisdom in that, and here's what you guys got to know. Whenever you hear that from somebody, just know it's a matter of time before they're saying the same things about you.
That's right.
That's just the truth.
That's right. So don't leave. And I love that. He wouldn't. And we used to have something, I hardly do it anymore. It was called your church letter. And what it was is you would actually carry a letter with you. That was back in the ancient days.
Your letter.
Your letter. You would take a letter
intent.
to another. If you moved to a new town
Yeah.
and you wanted to join that Baptist church, you had to have a letter from your previous church that said you left in good standing. Okay? That's where the letter came from. It wasn't that, oh, we're just letting you know that now they've joined here. You carried really a letter saying, my church, I left in good standing.
I actually love that.
Okay? Well, we don't do that anymore.
I know. But you know what? That idea would be so helpful.
It'd be
Because
so
how many
helpful.
times do I call? I mean, honestly, I'm just thinking this week.
Yeah.
I'll call a pastor and be like,
Yeah.
hey, man, I don't know if you know this, but this family just left. They're coming here. Is this cool or what's going on? They're coming there?
Yeah.
You need to know. I mean, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Gee
exactly.
whiz.
So you got to make sure if you're going to leave a church, there's no unresolved conflict and
Yep.
you're leaving on good terms.
Yep.
Number 4, consider how your transfer will affect others. Your Christianity is not only about you, it's about Christ and others. If your heart is right, you will feel the weight of what this potential move will do to others. If you can leave without affecting anyone, then you were probably not a good church member. That's really, if you can just walk out the door and nobody noticed.
That is so true.
If you can walk out the door and nobody noticed, you weren't even a good church
golly,
member.
Man.
So before you leave a church,
Yeah.
think about, even if it's just moving to a new location, realize what you're lost.
How will this, thinking about, again, it goes back to think of others before yourself.
Right. Determine where you would transfer your membership before you leave. I like that. Don't be out there without a church to go to.
Yeah.
So even if you move to another city, keep your membership in that church where you are, not indefinitely, but until you find another church. So you're always under someone's authority. I think that's really important. And then I love this last one, brothers. Have an exit interview with your pastor. It's hard to do that because sometimes they don't want to, but one of the most helpful things you can do as a pastor for your own benefit is to have exit interviews with members who leave your church. And, it's right for you to talk to your pastor before you leave a church, and so he'll understand why you're leaving. And as a pastor, I want to know more about what I might have done that have made this place a place where you can't seem to flourish. So I think exit interviews are really important.
and I would say, here's how I would apply that. You may hear that and think, well, is this like some formal exit interview? Maybe not. I mean, how we do it is, again, one of our pastors is charged by the other pastor elders to follow up with that family. If we hear that they're leaving, and here's this reality, most aren't going to tell you.
No, they're not going to tell you the truth.
And so we're going to go after them and say, hey, we've noticed you haven't been around, right? What's going on? Could we have done something differently? Is there anything you need? If nothing else, here's what I want to say. Can I help you transition to another church?
Exactly.
We've invested in you. We love you. We love your family. And hopefully that's the ideal, to be able to pass the baton. It's the letter idea.
Absolutely, 100%. Well, this is a great article by H.B. Charles. We'll put it in the show notes. And you can share it with your congregation. Reasons not to leave your church, reasons you should leave your church, and then how to leave your church. Very helpful stuff. Thank you for listening to Revitalize and Replant. Man, please subscribe and share this with other people. We want this information to get out there and be as helpful to as many people as we possibly can.
Thanks for joining us today on Revitalize and Replant. This podcast is brought to you by the North American Mission Board, where we help dying or struggling churches regain health for the glory of God and the good of their communities. If you found this conversation helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. To learn more about becoming a replanting pastor or to explore resources about revitalization for your own church, visit churchreplanters.com.